It was good, y'all. It's CBA to CD Southern, and today we're going over One Piece, the live action anime. Season 2 just came out a couple of weeks ago. I just finished watching it a couple of days ago. So we're going to go over that. And also, we're going to be having the Straw Hats going up against the Marines today. All right, let's get to it. All right, so I've been watching animes ever since back in like 2000 or whatnot. I got started off with Dragon Ball Z, which many of us got started off with. Great anime by Akira Toriyama. And I was a big fan of that. But from the years, it's been, I guess, 25, 30 years since I was first introduced to Dragon Ball Z. And ever since then, there's never been a really good live action Dragon Ball DBZ movie or show or anything like that. So I was first introduced to One Piece, one of the big three. You got One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach. And I was first introduced to One Piece about 5 years ago. I was just like, I was looking for another anime to get into. And so I started watching it. And at first it really didn't it really didn't get my interest. It was kind of goofy. It wasn't my style anime. I know Dragon Ball Z could be kind of goofy at times and things like that, but it felt a little bit more real. So I don't know. One Piece just wasn't really my thing. Then Netflix came out with the original One Piece live action about in 2023, and it also involved let me see if I can pronounce his name right, Ichiro Oda, who created One Piece. So I was like, okay, maybe this has a chance, and we'll see what ends up happening with this. So I went ahead and watched the first season, and the first couple of episodes I wasn't really into. It was still kind of goofy, just like the show, but I kept giving it a chance. And then all of a sudden, I really started getting into it with the Usopp episode, which was episode 3 when they first introduced Usopp, because that episode took the whole show to a different depth when it comes to seriousness and when it comes to just heart. Because I was like, okay, wait a minute, this is more than just a goofy anime. This actually has some substance to it, emotional substance to it, especially with Usopp being the main character in those couple of episodes, episode 3, episode 4, and the villain in those episodes gave it a little bit more threat that I kind of liked. And as I went on watching the rest of the season, and it introduced, Nami's backstory, introduced Sanji's backstory, Zoro backstory, and obviously Luffy, I really started to get ingrained into the heart of the show, and I could tell that it truly was being created and advised by Oda. Now, I know he wasn't the one who produced it and everything like that, but I could tell that they were listening to him and they were taking his advice when it comes to presentation of the show, and I really liked that. And you can really tell that the show really cherished the IP, the original IP of One Piece, and wanted to really translate it from the cartoon, the anime, into a live action. And even though I hadn't made it that far into I only made it like 10 to 12 episodes into the anime, I could really feel that the characters stay true to the original show, even though I hadn't even made it that far into the anime, just because they felt real. They felt like there was heart and soul placed into them, even by the actors, and they felt authentic. And you could just kind of tell that based off of the presentation of the season and of the episodes. Even though I even barely knew these characters, you start to feel like, okay, I am starting to know these characters, and I can tell that it's based off of what actually originally happened in the show. And I could feel the emotional depth of each episode, and when it came to the writing and when it came to the characters and the action, and that carried over through the entire season, especially into the Arlong climax in the final episode, and also what happens with the Marines in that 8th episode of the first season. And because I enjoyed the live action so much, I actually went back and watched the anime again, try to give it another chance because I love the live action. And I got all the way into the 400 episodes deep. And if you don't know, One Piece is like 1,000+ episodes long. And I got 400 episodes deep, but I couldn't make it any further because for me, it started to get kind of redundant. There wasn't enough, like, I guess, character development for me in the anime. It was just the not the seasons, but the arcs were too stretched out for me. And I felt like the climax was just the same thing over and over again. You just more beaten down, more punching in order to win the day by Luffy. And I know, I'm sure that after episode 400 or whatnot, that it goes into different realms. I understand that. I've been told by my friends and things like that, but I was just like, yo, I can't keep up with this for that long. But anyway, let me get back to this game real quick. So it's like I was saying earlier in the video, I finally finished season 2, which came out earlier this month. Um, I didn't like it as much as season 1. I felt like the acting wasn't on par as season 1, and the first, I guess, 3 or 4 episodes, something felt off about it. I don't know what it was, but the writing just wasn't there. Also, it's ironic. I felt like the writing was better in the anime than I did the second season. I love the writing in the first season, but the second season, I don't know, it just something just kind of felt off when it came to it. But there were parts of it that I did like. I like the actress who played Vivi. I really think that she brought that when she first came on the scene as an assassin. She brought that kind of borderline goofiness of her being an assassin. I believe she was called Miss Wednesday at that point. But at the same time, there was a little tinge of seriousness to her. And then I like the development of her character from being that into you understanding that she was the princess of Alabasta, and and you start to see more of her leadership qualities in flashbacks of her as a child, and also her in present day. And I thought the actress really brought out the kind of the little tinge of depth to her character, and so far as being a caring natural leader, even though she was still young. I like that about her. Also, I like the actress who played. Let me forgive me if I can't pronounce this right, but Tashigi. So the Tashigi officer, Marine officer in the anime, she didn't get. I feel like she didn't get as much play, at least through the first 400 episodes that I watched. She didn't get as much play as she does in the live action, and I love what the actress did with her in the live action because I was more drawn to her. She had that cutesy, I guess, not I don't want to say ditziness, but she did have a clumsiness to her. I guess it's the clumsiness. She had that ditzy kind of clumsiness to her that I really liked. She brought that across, but then there was a serious side to her, especially as a swordsman, and I really like that. Those are the positives I enjoyed about this season. Chopper, there was a big problem with Chopper's design and things like that. That was an outrage on the internet, but me, I liked it. I like Chopper's design. I liked the presentation of Chopper. I think they did well. They did right by Tony. Like I said, I just mentioned Vivi and Tashigi. Obviously, Anami is another strong character. But speaking of strong female characters, I like to take this time to address some of the Johnny Come Latelys when it comes to Japanese anime culture and the characterization of women. A lot of people have a problem with the way that the Japanese or animes present women. They feel like they objectify them, which I actually I wouldn't argue against that, but I feel like they're only looking at a specific element to the characterization of female characters within anime. And I also would argue that female characters are not the only ones objectified, and also they Japanese look at I guess sex and sexuality differently than we do over here in America. So often in anime, women can be shown in a sexualized way, as critics would say, and some of the male characters oogle at the women when they're shown in a sexualized way, and they say that this demeans the female characters. I actually will argue against this, mainly because they're ignoring the fact that the same thing people who criticize animes like this are knowing the fact the same thing happens to men. A lot of times when it comes to, like, let's talk about Dragon Ball Z, a lot of times the main character like Goku or Gohan, they have their clothes ripped off. They're just shredded in a way I can never be. And they're showing them in that light. Now, of course, in the context of fighting and stuff like that, your clothes are going to get ripped and everything. But at the same time, I feel like this also shows men and the physicality of men that could be seen as being sexualized. Now, also back in the day on Toonami, where I watched Dragon Ball Z, they had this show called what was called Muyo. I can't even pronounce it right. Tenchi Muyo, which was that had a male character that was that was attractive to all the female characters, and they used to sexualize him. They were used to desire him and do all kind of things to get him into compromising situations. So that show actually sexualized the primary male character, but it also sexualized the women too. But it was in a humorous way, which is exactly the way that animes present sexuality. They present it as a humorous thing. They present it as a natural effect of being human, especially when these animes are being presented to, young men that are obviously going to be attracted to women and women are attracted to men. The Japanese do not shy away from that. They do not, let's say, demonize the sexuality or our natural instinct to be attracted to other people. They don't look at this as being objectification. This is just being honest with who we are as people, as human beings. And another example of this is men are also kind of sexualized when it comes to animes presented and directed towards a female audience. So you have romantic animes too that aren't all action and adventure. The action and adventure are obviously going to be geared to the guys, while the romantic kind of animes are geared to young women. Well, even in romance, the men are sexualized oftentimes along with the women because once again, that is just a natural part of being human. If you're a teenage boy, you're going to be attracted to teenage girls. If you're a teenage girl, you're going to be attracted to teenage guys. You're going to look at them in a certain way, in a way that you're attracted to physically. The Japanese culture simply accepts this reality and does not demonize or run away from that reality. All right, so another point of contention I have with critics of anime is that they act like the only way women are portrayed in anime is through is sexualization. No, the Japanese accept sex and appreciate it as a healthy part of society and culture, but they also display women in a positive light. Also, I feel like, especially when it comes to One Piece, Nami, Vivi, Nico Robin, they're some of the most intelligent characters in the show. The guys usually act very immature. They're always fighting each other, and Luffy always wants to solve things through fighting. While Nami, I feel like she's actually the heart of the team, of the crew. She's not only the navigator, but I feel like she directs the team. I guess in a soulful manner. Like she's the one. She's the glue that keeps everyone together. She's like, I guess, the moral standard to the team, and just being like, we need to go this way. She's like almost like a motherly figure. Vivi, as a princess and as a soon-to-be leader, already acts that way. She acts like a leader. She's very mature in the way she handles situations and the way she handles people, and you see that leadership quality coming, exuding, and coming through her. Nico Robbins is probably the most intelligent character in the show from those first 400 episodes that I've watched. You can't tell it yet when it comes to the live action, but in the early parts of the show, she's extremely intelligent. So I feel like they display women not simply as sexualized characters, and really that's just a minor part of their characterization. Because even though Nico Robbins is very beautiful, all the female characters are very beautiful in the light of anime, but that's not the only thing to them. They have heart, they have intelligence, and they have leadership qualities. And other animes also present women in this light. Like when we go back to Dragon Ball Z, Bulma is the most intelligent character on that show. She has beauty. She's the brains and the beauty of that show. So yeah, even though at times, especially Master Roshi oogles at her from time to time, very much so sexualizing her appearance, and she beats him up. She hits him upside the head a couple of times for that, but she's very much so a very intelligent character, and she leans into her beauty, which there are a lot of women who take pride in their beauty and love their beauty and love when they can attract male attention. I don't know if you've ever watched Gundam Wing. Gundam Wing was another show, anime on Toonami, in which the female characters on Gundam Wing were very intelligent, very mature in comparison to the five main male characters on that show. Now, the five main male characters also were teenagers, so you could see where the immaturity came from, but they allowed their emotions to run them. And they were so emotional that one second they wanted to off this one person, and the next second they wanted to protect that same person. it was just like it was very confusing watching the male characters because emotionally they were all over the place, while the female characters showed extreme leadership qualities and showed strength when it came to maturity. So once again, this was another anime presenting women in a very strong, mature light. Same thing with Sailor Moon, which Sailor Moon provided female characters in which young women could look up to. They were women of strength and things like that. All right, so I said all that before to say this. There's a certain way that Japanese look at sex and sexuality in comparison to American culture. And I like to they, they don't look at it as something, like I said, to be demonized. All right. And to be honest with you, the Hawks, the NBA basketball team, the Hawks, I'm in Atlanta, they had a Magic City night, or they were set up to have a Magic City night, which got canceled by the NBA because Magic City is a strip club in the city. Now, strip clubs are actually a kind of a big deal. They're part of the culture of Atlanta. And so down here, it depends on who you are, but we're kind of more accepting of strip clubs and those kind of facilities and environment. And obviously, a lot of people, not a lot of people, but certain people didn't like the fact that the NBA was sponsoring a night like this, or were allowing one of their teams to sponsor a night like this. So Magic City has actually been around since the 80s, and there are many NBA teams or NBA players that have frequent Magic City, and it's also a part of the hip hop community. A lot of hip hop artists in Atlanta got their start at Magic City and things like that, or have been associated with Magic City. It's just a big part of our Atlanta culture down here. So a lot of people believe that this associating the NBA with a strip club wasn't it's something that shouldn't have happened. It's something that shouldn't have been a part of the culture, or something that the NBA should have represented. And yet, but here's the ironic thing about it: the NBA also supports gambling. You see what I'm saying? It also supports alcohol sales in a family environment within the stadium. Kids are around while the adults are drinking alcohol. The adults can be gambling on their phones and things like that. The NBA also has strong ties with China and Saudi Arabia, which have questionable human rights history, recent history. You could say all countries have questionable human rights history if you go back far enough, but I'm talking about recent history. Saudi Arabia and China have had questionable things that have happened in the recent past. Now, when it came to, also, I like to say this, when it came to the Magic City night, it wasn't like strippers were going to actually be attending the arena or going through the arena or anything like that. It was simply you were going to get a hoodie that said Magic City. They're going to sell lemon pepper wings, which is a big staple at the strip club, the Magic City Strip Club. And also, they were going to have T.I. perform there, which is an ode to the rap culture from which Atlanta comes from. Now, here's the thing about it, because people say strip clubs objectify women and things like that, but women are actively choosing to have these careers. All right, they could make money in a plethora of ways, but the women who go to strip clubs are choosing these careers. I've actually personally known women who said they have thought about becoming strippers, not because they wanted to, I mean, not because they needed to, because they actually desired to be a stripper. They want to express themselves that way. They didn't see anything wrong with expressing themselves in an exotic manner such as that. Once again, demonizing that is a very, I guess, Puritan American point of view, a very religious point of view. But there are a lot of women who are perfectly fine with expressing themselves in that manner. We have seen that in the past years when it comes to sites like OnlyFans, and there are other adult entertainment sites in which women willingly choose to express themselves in a sexual way, and they don't feel like there's anything wrong with that. They're making money off of that. There are plenty of strippers who use that money to pay their way through college, pay their rent, and stuff like that. So it's a completely different culture, or a cultural view of that. They're not looking at it as being an objectification of themselves. And even if it was, they're completely fine with it, because once again, we're all sexual in nature. We all, even if you're married, if you don't look at your wife from time to time in a sexual manner, in a manner that, I want to just, there's some things I could say right here, but you understand what I'm saying. But so we all objectify one another at some points. We all lust after one another at some points. So it's kind of a form of hypocrisy to say that women are not allowed to willingly choose to express themselves in this manner and saying that it's evil or it's you're objectifying yourself, because at some points we all lust after other people. All right, so an example of the difference between American culture and Japanese culture. Japanese, um, they're very open and honest about their strip clubs, and their red light district is very widely advertised. If you go to Tokyo, is pretty much in the major cities, and they're completely open and fine with it being out in public, even though they have specific sections, specific parts of town in which the red light district occurs. They don't look at stripping as something to be frowned upon or demonized. They look at it, many ways they look at it as exotic dancing, look at it as an art in many ways. Even though obviously it's a sexualized form of art, but they look at it as an art. It's a form of self-expression. They don't look at it the same way as Americans view stripping and things like that. We're all nude underneath these clothes here. So they're not afraid of nudity, and they don't shy or hide from it in the same way American culture seems to shy and hide from nudity. The same thing happened in ancient Rome, in which they used to have graffiti of various genitalia on the walls of ancient Rome for everyone to see, including children. And mainly because they weren't afraid of nudity. They saw it as a form of self expression. They used it as humor. They used it derogatorily towards enemies, like political enemies and things like that. But it was just an accepted part of being human. And because they're like, we're all equipped with these features of our body, why are we going to be ashamed of them? Same thing happens in modern day Europe when it comes to uh, nude beaches. People go out to the beach, they can be completely naked, and you're like, and not only that, but there are nude beaches that accept children. So children are out there naked with adults out in the open. Because once again, if you don't stigmatize it, then it doesn't become a big deal. When you accept your nudity and you accept nudity as a part of being human and it's not stigmatized in that manner, then it is not as taboo when it comes to that specific culture, just like in Europe. Going back to the Far East, look at Korean spas. Korean spas, you are often naked within a Korean spa. Now they keep it separate, gender separate. So there's a side for women and a side for men. But for all the men in their side of the spa, they're all naked, and there could be boys in there. There could be boys in there naked. Same thing with girls on the women's side. So it's just an accepted part and an accepted norm of being human. Same thing with African tribes. There are certain African tribes where women are bare-breasted and they just walk around exposed in that manner, but it's not seen as a big deal. It's like, okay, that's a natural part of your body. That's who cares? It's just a part of being human. And oftentimes there are other parts of genitalia on men and women that are exposed in that light. So it once again, it's a very cultural thing to look at nudity and to look at sex and to look at the expression of sex in a taboo way. That's very American Puritan culture to look at it that way, and that's not universal around the world. So just finish up. Like you got to understand that just because you view sex and you view the exposing of one's body and the expression of one's body in a nude fashion in a certain way doesn't mean that everyone sees it that same way. It doesn't mean it's something to be demonized, and it doesn't mean it's something that you should hide from or not accept. Because once again, the only reason any of us are here is because at one point there are two people lusted after one another, and that led to sex, and now we're here. That's how the human race keeps going. That's how procreation works, is because at some point we sexualize the view of someone else. We look at them with that kind of eye. So just finishing up here. So really, it's your culture that determines how you view sex. It's your culture that determines how you view lust. It's your culture that determines if you run and hide from sexual activity and the expression of nudity in a certain fashion. Some cultures find it far more acceptable to be nude or around in public or express sexuality in public more so than other cultures. Just because your culture doesn't accept that sort of expression doesn't mean it's inherently evil or wrong. You may feel that way, but once again, that's a cultural perspective. And never forget that lust and sexuality and that sort of expression is the reason any of us are here. It's an expression of sex. It's an expression of attraction. It's an expression of objectification. Now, you may view that person as being more than just a sexual object, but there are points in time where you see them exclusively as being a sexual object in that point, in that moment of time. So other cultures seem not to hide from that. They seem not to run for that, while American culture or certain people or certain elements of American culture have more of a puritan view of it. It's not that one culture's right and another culture's wrong. It's just different perspectives. So once again, in Atlanta, we had a different perspective of sexuality. And the way we view strip clubs. And the same thing for Japanese when it comes to their expression of sex when it comes to anime. All right, so that's the end of the topic version of this episode or of this game. If you want to see the complete game and see how it turns out when it comes to the Straw Hats versus the Marines, you can actually you can see it right there at the end. But anyway, so that's it for this video. If you want to download my game, it's down below and in the description. So go ahead and get down there and do what you do. All right. See you next time.